the first sign that we're going to build. Rob, I'll share my screen and you can build it on the testing one.
Hold on. Wow. Once you go to
Okay, Rob, do you have the screen?
yeah. Okay. The first one is basically that window, that woman's sign, door sign, basically. So we're going to do a composition sign product. Now, the way we're doing it here is an acrylic. This may also could be made as a photopolymer. We'll get into that to the next one. So it's basically how many they're doing. The ADA compliancy is really just informational. The height and width of this particular sign. The definition, which could just be manually written. And then we're going to add the first piece, which is the back plate. The back plate's the same size. The piece is a back plate. Again, this is informational as well and could just be typed in text. The process, what we're doing is we're basically just cutting it out. So we're going to say it's dimensional. The part type is acrylic. And at this point, we're going to say it's a 1/8 inch acrylic. We're going to calculate on area only. We're just doing 1, just a 20% scrap factor. Now, in this particular case, we don't need to engrave it because this is just the back plate. So all we're doing is cutting it out. So I'm going to go tell it how I'm cutting it. The equipment and the complexity, this is pretty square. Now that I have the cutting, we're also adding the braille to this back plate. So if I move to my braille, we're going to add the braille. This particular braille isn't included in the process. If it was a photopolymer, so the braille was made at the same time as the photopolymer process, I would say include in other process. In this case, we're manually adding the braille as raster. What that braille is going to be and what the bead is that's going to be used. Once we have the braille in and we've cut it out, we're also going to paint this back plate. Okay, and that's really all we need to do to this back plate. We're adding painting, braille, and we're cutting it out. The next piece is really the engraved letters and figure of the woman. And so I'm going to add a new piece for that one. Now in this particular case, I'm not going to say it takes up the full size because there's not the bottom, there's not the edges, so I may shrink this down to say it's more of a 14 by 10. Now, it could be considered applied text. I may say it's applied text and graphics if I'm doing doing it as one line. The process is also dimensional. The part type is another acrylic. In this particular case, it's white, so we don't need to paint it, but we are going to cut it out. As a separate cut. Depending on what you're using, here this would often be more of the engraver side of something, compared to the Gerber. And that one's going to be a little bit more complex because it's got characters and the other one, and a text, and a logo. Now, if we were doing these in one run to where they were running the backs and the fronts all on the same piece, we could probably lose the setup in this one because if we were using the same machine, because they'll all be done in one in the same setup. That just removes the setup time from this particular cutting process since we've added it to the first cutting process. Now the other thing we have in this is just the assembly labor. Since we've created this as two separate pieces, we need to now assemble them back together. I'm going to do a half hour of assembly. And that's really basically the first one, the examples. Any questions there?
Yeah, I have a question. On the engraving process there, you had mentioned on the cutting that would be the engraver for the machine type. Why wouldn't you just use the engraving?
Oh, okay. Generally, this engraving is for a removal of material. Okay. I would have used the engraving if I was boring out that logo and those letters, but I'm not. What I'm doing is doing a perimeter cut on that and then applying the two. Okay. So engraving is generally the removal of information, where cutting is just the perimeter cutting of something.
Yeah. Okay. Rob, on that, generally when they route out or cut the outlines of the logo and the letters, they're not assembling it back in. They put them together first and then route out the shape and then engrave around the shape. So
correct. If they were doing,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, that's it. I was going to say something.
Right. Now, if they were doing a bore-out type engraving, which is what you're talking about, where they were gluing the pieces together first, or they're buying a material that was multicolored in layers, which is what a lot of these are. You know, they buy them in multicolored layers and then bore out one layer at a time. Then it would just really be the two pieces if you were gluing them together. And you're right, instead of the cutting, it would be an engraving, because what you're doing is you're engraving, you're boring out. But the time factor is very different than when you're boring out something compared to when you're just doing a perimeter cut on something.
I guess the material would just be under your acrylic type there as multi-layered 1/8 inch or something like that, blue, red, or whatever it's going to be, right?
It would be these engraving stocks is generally what we'd be talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
There's a category for them, these row marks.
Okay. Got it.
Does that make sense to everybody?
I just get a little confused between cutting and engraving.
Rob, is your comment that engraving is usually the removal of material, is that pretty standard in the industry, or is that something that we're making an assumption that people might not normally make?
It'd be engraving as three-dimensional routing. Yes, I would consider the removal of something, where cutting is the perimeter cutting of something out.
Maybe we could explain those things with a little help button.
Maybe engraving.
Are there other terms that would be more obvious to you there?
That's a good question. I just think I know you can turn those windows down on and off on the bottom. I know we have them all on now. I think it's just, as far as a demo, we need to, pick one and go through it. But typically when they do a sign like that, it's a tactile that they're using for the raised graphics and lettering, which is applied before they cut, and they really engrave around it or cut around it, depending on the term you use. I don't think there's a universal name for it.
Well, I think in your case, if they're applying two pieces together, then it's an engraving process because they're removing material.
Correct.
And they're not actually cutting it.
Well, see, that's the problem. They're not really removing anything. They're cutting a perimeter around the graphics and the lettering. It cuts just deep enough so that they can pull off the excess.
Okay, well, you're talking, right, and that's what they're removing, the excess. They're boring out something. Now, if you're talking about just an outline of something, like in the row mark where they're just doing a line, that's, now, personally, this product would be much better done as photopolymer. I mean, if I did photopolymer, this would be a very quick photopolymer job, and it would be a one layer, tipped and done. But at this point, we're saying that was two pieces of acrylic rather than a piece of row mark removed. Just how we chose the sample. Because different shops would do the sign differently.
Right, and if a shop doesn't have photopolymer, we have to show them how they can do it this way.
Right.
Correct.
Agreed.
Or with the row mark.
Would they want to specify the rounded corners here?
Sure. They could do that now if they were just cutting in the basic function,
right?
Like if they were using perimeter cutting on the thing and so they weren't, then the rounded corners would not be really extra.
Okay.
If
when
they
would
were
that
doing
come into play?
If they were doing the rounded corners other ways, it would be a finishing option. And
I guess my
question is finishing on this piece.
When do you call it a round? Yeah, well, no, I was thinking the first piece, the blue.
Well, I think in most cases, Mitch, rounded corners are irrelevant in the ADA type process because that's going to come from your cutting, and the machine's going to do it. It may be a note,
right?
But as far as a process of what they would charge for,
okay.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't ever see where they would actually charge for it because it is part of the cutting process.
That's what I thought.
Now, they could add it as a finishing option. Like right now, I don't have the finishing tab on Dimensional, but you could add the finishing tab, and it could be an option under finishing for rounded corners if they wanted to charge for it.
Yeah, but like Dean said, it's already done there, so they probably, other than a note, rounded corners.
It's probably faster to cut rounded than it is to cut square.
That's probably true.
Yeah, you're probably right. Then again, I don't know. I'm finding the different ways to process this product is where I'm being challenged.
Mm-hmm.
Would it help to add help screens on each of these processes?
Seems like there's so many variables and ways they could do it. I mean, it would be great, but it sounds like
it really is.
Go on, Rob.
In my opinion, no, the help screens wouldn't help. I think it's just a training process for us. We need to understand it better, and we need to educate our customer on how it works. But there are so many different processes. I mean, we done talked about three here. You got raster, you got photopolymer, you got the multi-layered material, which you can then engrave it out. There is no one size fits all. We just need to understand the entire process and be able to demonstrate to our prospect what process they're using. And that's where I was kind of falling short is I don't know what all those processes are, nor do I know how they're handled in the pricing screen here. But now I think I got it now. It was just a matter of understanding it.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you got it. How did you know, even looking at this blue sign with the woman, that there was two pieces, that it wasn't just routed out? How did we know it was a two-piece?
We
Well,
didn't.
he didn't.
Okay.
That's the whole point. It could either be a two-piece that you put together, or
Right.
it could be a two-piece material that they purchased that's already blue and white, and they're going to engrave all the white away and just leave the blue in the background, or it could be photopolymer. They're going to just do tipping on it.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to ask your, if you were going to use this in a demonstration for your prospect, you would open it up and say, okay, Mr. Prospect, how would you produce this? Are you using acrylic? Are you using the multi-layer material that you're already pre-purchased, and you're going to engrave it out, or are you doing photopolymer? And then you would demonstrate it based on what their process is and how they handle it.
Yeah, that's where my challenge is.
What do you think would be helpful to help you get over that challenge? Just continuing to go through this process of the different types that we could use for a particular sign?
It's knowledge. There's no question about that. But I don't know if what Dean just said, those three processes, I couldn't even write down fast enough. Photopolymer, cutout.
Let's take a look real quick.
It's knowledge there in the production side of it.
Well, two different topics that we're talking about here, just to make sure we're aware of it. Mitch, one, I think part of your challenge is just education on the industry, or this subsegment in the industry. The second theme that's kind of interwoven with this topic is, do we have the right names for some of these processes and fields? And that's the question about engraving or routing or whatever, removing material or other, you know what I mean? So just to make sure we're not confusing the two in our minds as we're chatting about it. Mitch, there may be easy ways to address, the education that you're looking for. Secondly, we need to figure out, do we have the right terminology in here so it's obvious to an experienced sign maker in this segment. This isn't a segment that sign makers just jump into, as you guys know, like vinyl or digital where they just pick it up one day. This tends to require a little more experience. The contracts are harder to win, et cetera, right?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So we're most likely going to be selling this to folks that are already in the business, that already know it. But Mitch, let me know if you want help figuring that out.
On the educational side, yeah, you said it well. The pricing form looks great. I don't know if we're using the right terminology or not because of the lack of the education. But yeah, any info on the education side, Charlie, that I've done some Googling, but I haven't really found a page that helps me tremendously.
Mitch, it might be good for you to find a shop locally and go
That's
watch.
a good idea.
Maybe they only do one of the processes, but at least you would. I mean, in the end result is the same. No matter if it's one of the three processes, the end result will practically look the same. It's just a matter of seeing how it's put together and produced. It may help you out a lot.
Yeah, I agree. Good point. All right.
We did that down here, and it. Linda, would you say that helps?
Oh, definitely.
Corey? Yeah, they're
Definitely.
shaking their heads.
Yeah, okay. Gotcha.
Let's throw them after the call about that one.
Yeah, I'm writing down on site now.
Well, you know what might help with this is, it looks like I'm with photopolymer right now. Why don't we have one of you guys build it another way and try it, and as we all kind of sit around and watch, and that might help explain it a little bit better. And Rob, if you want to save this one with the photopolymer, save it, because then we'll have it as a reference to go back.
Kind of explain what you've done here, Rob.
I'm going to. I was just kind of filling a couple things out.
Yeah,
okay,
I see that.
while we're talking. Okay, basically, if I could replace these two items and do it all in photopolymer, all in one piece, basically. And to do that, what you'd be doing is you'd be doing a photopolymer, your interior, your photopolymer material, and then you're basically going to do the photopolymer process with the orbital X, what the image is. Then we're going to screen print or tip the coloring on the top of it. So we're going to do a manual tipping with a particular ink. And then we're going to do the braille, but the braille is actually part of the photopolymer process, so there is no additional labor included in it. So we're basically going to say it's included in another process and what it is and the quantity. And then we're going to cut it out. So in this same sign in photopolymer really is just one piece. It would just be this one piece that is cut, the braille's been added, the photopolymer processing has been done, and the screen printing tipping has been done to create the same sign. Any thoughts there?
When you select added in process, that means it doesn't add additional labor to the sign.
No,
right?
If you remove the setup, it doesn't add. It doesn't add the setup labor. It still adds labor for the time to produce it, but it assumes you've already set up the equipment and gotten things prepared, because it's saying that you've already done this in this order, so it's just part of combining those two processes, so there's not an additional setup time.
Okay. There's also a selection box, I think, on one or the other. It might have been Braille, where it says include in process.
Yes. That basically means I'm including it in the photopolymer processing. Therefore, there is no additional labor involved.
Okay.
Wait a minute, I don't understand. So if you check the setup box, that does mean you're going to add more labor to it, or it's included?
Okay, on the two different things. On the Braille, this include another process.
Right.
Says there's no additional labor in this Braille because it's being done in the same photopolymer. Right.
Okay.
On almost all the tabs, there is a setup tab on the top right corner. What this is basically doing is saying that setup time is included in this function. The reason being, if we go back to our piece 1 and piece 2, where we were doing those two separate functions, well, actually they're on the same material, how I have it, so they may just process it all through the machine at once. So in this second cutting, there's really no setup charge because the setup has already been handled with the first one.
Oh, okay.
And so it doesn't need to be repeated.
Okay. Thanks.
Any thoughts there, or should we?
Rob, why don't you
I just
say
have a
this?
quick question. Why do we have the different quantities, the one up above and down below?
Because this is the overall finished quantity. But let's say what this piece was when we were adding 2 photopolymer strips to a backplate, the top and the bottom. Well, this may be quantity of 2, and they're actually 2 by 12s because I'm putting a 2-inch strip on the top and a 2-inch strip on the bottom. And so there's actually 2 by 12s for every composition sign.
Okay, so if you had 100 quantity up there above and you did 2 per composite, that would be 200 pieces of that 2 by 12.
Correct.
Got it. Got it. Let me ask you another question. Now, and this has come up a couple times. Let's just do a simple process. Let's say I'm going to do 100 women and 100 men signs. And we need to record the Braille. Would that be just a separate piece, or would that be a separate product?
What do you mean by record the Braille?
Well, if you look at the Braille, let's say we're going to do this photopolymer. We record it on the photopolymer process, that Braille. You know, we're going to do these 100 pieces. We're going to do the Braille in women. But then we have another 100 pieces that we're going to do in men. These are going to be men restroom signs. So is that 2 separate products, or is that 2 separate pieces?
You're doing 100 men and 100 women.
I would say it's a separate line item.
Yeah, I would
and
look
you're
at it
just
as
going to
2
clone
separate.
the first one and change the text on
Okay.
the thing. Now, you
Okay.
could remove the setups if you wanted as well, if you were going to run them together.
Okay, so there are 2 separate line items. Okay, so let's say I'm doing a 3-story building, and the first floor has 100 rooms, second floor has 200 rooms, and we're going to do room number, start with 100, then go 101, 102, 103. And I understand those in that scenario, what we're saying, they would be different line items. Now, reality is we can't have that many line items. How do you suggest that we tackle that?
Well, again, I wouldn't necessarily say they're different line items in a big order if they're all being produced the same way and they're all the same size with a different text. I would basically do a separate text option for them. They're not going to go in and type in all the text to all those options typically anyway, especially if there are a number of them. So in the notes,
Okay.
I would probably describe them all.
So you would just leave Braille, you would type in like room, and then see notes or something like that, and then
Correct.
look at the notes to get the numbers? Okay, that's fine. I
Correct.
was just curious of how that would be handled.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on scale. If I'm doing hundreds of the same thing with one different number difference, I'm not going to do that. Does that make sense?
So you would
I'm not going to do
paste
100 line items.
You would paste in the numbers, then the sequential numbers in production notes? Is that how you would do it?
Correct. Now, even if they do that, I mean, if they're dealing with hundreds and thousands of little images, they're not going to do that. They're going to pull out the design work, and the designer's going to send it all to them as files, and it's not going to be them typing in every room number for every thing, typically, to that detail. They might,
I
and more
agree with
power
that.
to them, but
Okay, Rob, why don't you...
Is that pretty common? I mean, room numbers would seem like a fairly common thing.
that's correct. It would be fairly common. But they would all be the same sign, just with a different number involved.
A different text.
Correct.
Rob, do you want to save this order, but change where you have the quantity 1 and the height 2 and 12 back to where we had it? And if we save this, we can go back and refer to it. How about somebody come in and try to design a sign themselves? Just to,
Do we want to go through the others first, or are you ready to do that now?
No, I think, we could go ahead and start doing that.
Okay.
I think that's how maybe some more questions will come up. So we can go to the next one, and who wants to be the guinea pig? Don't all jump
I'll do
at
it.
once.
I'll do it.
Okay. All right, let's try to build the music library, and we can work through it, and Rob, you can jump in and help when needed. Rob, can you change it to Lee, or is it Kathy?
It should be everybody, right?
Okay.
If not, you can,
I'll just give it to everybody.
right?
Okay. Did you save this one?
It's all in one line item. I didn't save it as a separate line item.
No, that's fine.
So just hit OK and open up a new one.
Okay. All right, Lee, you want to try creating the
Yeah,
music?
show me the picture of it again. I know I've had my hands on it several times.
The picture is right here.
All right. All right, so let's talk, let's see, what do you have for the process there? Let's see here. Okay. Aluminum backplate with photopolymer. Okay. Raised letters. All right. All right, that was a 3x5, I believe, right?
6x8.
6x8, wow. All right. All right. So that's photopolymer. Okay. That would be the first one, right?
That's correct. You're
Okay.
good with that. You'll
Go ahead.
want to do a couple other things to it.
Okay.
Predominantly
gotta
the
do
braille.
Okay. Well. And then the text. What was it, music room?
Correct.
Yeah, music library.
All right. Okay.
And then you want to cut it out.
No. Now I need to color it.
Braille.
What's that?
Yeah, check your box to add Braille.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for costing purposes, is that right? Or pricing purposes, right?
As well as to print it on. Yeah, it just basically starts the process. It adds the labor and
So that
Right.
wasn't in the process. Bad braille.
not without add braille, it would not have printed on anything.
All right. And then we need to screen print it.
What are you screen printing? What part of this?
Well, we have to do the raised lettering. And
Hold on. Let me take a look at what that sign looked like.
No, I think the only thing you're screen printing is going to be the, well, yeah, I guess you will. You have to tip it silver or whatever it is.
okay.
There is no back plate. This is a face plate.
Well, he's starting the reverse. You can do it either way. He's just starting with the face plate and going backwards
Mm-hmm.
instead of starting with the back and going to the front.
Okay.
Okay. Am I missing anything on the top portion of it? I've got my cutting method.
I think you look good.
Braille, okay. And new piece would be the that would just be dimensional, and then I believe you said 04 aluminum, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be brushed aluminum.
Okay. And really all we're going to do is cut this.
Correct.
Now, when I use cut and engraving, I'm really thinking of bits. I'm using the same machine. I'm using my Gerber.
That's correct.
But I'm going to use my cutting bit and not my engraving bit.
Correct. And it does the calculations different.
I'm just going to hit add cutting. It's very simple. Should be done.
Okay. The only other pieces we're missing are the frame. You'll need to go ahead in the frame.
All right.
And in this particular one, there's actually two separate types of frame pieces. So they'd actually be put in as two separate.
Okay. So
Is
again,
a hardware kit? A frame kit?
That's hard to say. This frame, it might be a frame kit, but the odds are is it's that they made it.
Okay.
So frame linear is a perimeter frame that they're going to actually make. A frame each is a kit that they buy.
all right. Now the frame itself has two tops, and they're a little bit different. The sides are different than the tops.
Let's go ahead and do linear, like you're going to make this frame.
Okay, and then my extrusion, or
Okay.
all right.
Right, now you could use extrusion too, because the frame extrusion thing is could overlap. As far as they may be using extrusion for frames in the custom process.
I don't see. I forgot the picture, but let's just say we're going to do the top and the bottom are the same process. The sides are a different process. So really, if I'm going to do the height right now, I'm going to do the sides.
Correct.
Then I'm going to need two per sign, and they're going to be three.
That's correct, but you don't really need to change the height and the width here.
Okay.
Because you're doing a 6x8. These are frame pieces, so they're linear pieces. They're not square footage pieces, so it's just looking at the perimeter. The main difference when you're dealing with frame is down here in usage. Right now it's saying I want to do perimeter, which is going to say you're doing 2 times the perimeter because you've done 2 quantity, and what you're actually doing is 2 times vertical. Right, because you're doing 2 vertical strips compared to horizontal strips.
Okay, so it'll say, hey, you need 12 inches.
Correct, because you may be doing, especially when you get into extrusion, you may be doing 4 down, 4 strips down for dividers, but they're all running vertical, so you're going to have 4 per piece, per vertical.
All right, so I need to change this back to 1 then.
No, you'd need 2.
You need to.
Yeah, I think 2.
But I'm telling it down here vertical, so it should already know, hey, you need 2.
It doesn't know you need 2. That's because it just says vertical. If you did perimeter, it would automatically assume you're going around the perimeter and only would use 1. But since you're saying you want it vertical, it doesn't know how many vertical you could. Because remember, they have to have the flexibility to add frames in the middle of pictures, and all these, they will be adding extrusion strips throughout all of it. And so the vertical, horizontal, perimeter function.
Would there be a scrap?
Best.
Would there be?
There could be. I would probably ask for scrap for that.
Okay.
Now, as far as the description here, I can type over this, right?
Correct.
I could put frame side. Okay. And then I'm going to clone this, and I'm just going to change something here. Let's see, am I there yet? Okay. So now I'm going to put frame top. And horizontal. I'm done.
Correct. Generally, what you'd have left here is there may be a little bit of hardware, and then the assembly, which is on the...
All right, now that's a good point. So I've got my price on my sign. Now I want to say, okay, now guys, when we get out to the building, we are going to mount this via double-sided tape.
Okay.
Or we're going to screw this into the drywall, the frame.
Typically, typically that would be on your back plate as a finishing option.
Okay. So that's where I go.
So here I would have miscellaneous finishing or adhesive message. So you'd have all your different tapes, etc. Now, you also have your hardware. Again, the install itself is an installation product. It's not dealt with here. That is differently. And this is basically your hardware, your separation type hardware. And they do raised if you need a barrel between the top layer and the bottom layer.
Okay.
And then your assembly time. And so to assemble all of this, it's, half hour, whatever it's going to be.
And that's figuring on each, right?
No. That is an overall assembly time.
Okay.
Because it's added assembly. It's still calculating the production of all these pieces, but there's no way for the system to really know how long it's going to take to combine all these pieces.
Okay. So then if you're doing 1,000 of these, then we've got the production cost in there. Now we're looking at, okay, overall, we're doing 1,000 of these. It's going to take me, 36 hours of production time to put all this together. Is that right?
Correct.
Or we're not saying it's going to take me 3 minutes each to put this stuff together.
No, I thought about that, but the problem there is if they do one, it's probably going to take them 20 minutes if they eat, for that one. If they do 1,000, it's probably going to get that down to about 2 minutes, just because of how production works,
Got it.
And that would be my concern going that route, but it would not be a difficult switch if we think that would be a better route to go.
Any thoughts on that, on which way you should go on that?
Well, I think it's a matter of preference. For me personally, I would want to say, okay, it's going to take me 3 minutes each. Figure it out for me.
Yeah, I would say per piece. That would be my preference, but I'm not
Okay.
shop owner.
Should I fix that, or should I just put a toggle that says each, or something of that nature, where they
You know what? I think what we'll do is we'll field test and ask at that
Okay.
time.
Sure. But it's similar to the additional hours, as additional labor as well, where this is really just all the labors in the system, and you can kind of choose whatever one you want to add to it. I could just say it's kit assembly of an hour.
Those two fields there, the additional and the assembly hour, do you think a help button describing their functionality might be helpful there?
Could be. Do you understand the difference? This is a fixed, this is pulling assembly labor, and this is pulling whatever labor you choose.
I'm not sure. Assembly labor was for per piece to put them together. An additional labor looked like kind of a catch-all. Was I right?
That is kind of correct, because it could be an additional labor of, anything, when it comes to this kind of work.
Yeah. Okay.
They could say they got to add some, additional sandblast labor, but not want to do the whole sandblast in here for some reason. Yeah. But it could be anything.
Going back to where he did the framing,
Sure.
did he not? He didn't add cutting or anything to this, did he?
No, and I may. I may add a little bit of cutting.
Okay.
Or it could be painted. And actually, depending on what they do, they may add options to framing. Like they may add the engraving functions to framing as well if they do a lot of wood frames and they actually engrave, into those frames.
Gotcha.
So what shows up with each type of process is really going to be determined on what that shop generally does.
And Lee, I noticed, it threw me a little bit, but you worked it kind of reverse of what Rob does. You worked from the face to the back. Is that how you usually did it?
I did, but I think that's just really whoever puts it together, that type thing.
Dean, in demoing this, have you found people usually do it face to back or back to face, or just doesn't matter?
I do back to front.
Interesting.
I mean, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong, but to me, you would start at the back and go to the front.
I've seen shops do it both ways, and if they're stuck on doing that way, it's not a fight I would recommend taking. If they just go, from the front to the back, I prefer the back to the front, just because that's how I think of building something.
Yeah, I mean, same here. That's just the way I think.
But it didn't seem to matter.
No, it really doesn't.
Mitch, when you go on that shop tour, you might want to ask.
I will.
Wait.
I think the right questions they'll tell you right off.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
All right, you want to save this one, and Dean and Mitch,
Hey,
I
Rob.
think you both should have a shot at this too.
Rob, make sure you promote that one. So it was on
Yeah,
the
see
chart.
that.
I'll clean this up and we'll post it with the Excel sheet with the pictures, and I'll send that around and give you where the location of the recording will be, so you can go back when you. Okay, any more questions on example number 2?
Nope.
All right. Dean, Mitch, who wants to do example number 3?
Dean, you can do it if you want, or if you want, I'll do it.
Well, you're both going to have a turn, so pick.
All right, I'll do it.
Well, let me
All right,
mess it up first.
This is
Go on.
juvenile court, ADA compliant. This is going to be
Yep.
8.5 by 11. I think that's what it was, right?
8
Oh,
by
8 by
11.
11.
8 by 11.
All right. Courtroom, U-piece, and let's see here, photopolymer, add printed logo, cut vinyl, 4 screws, and plastic 11-inch divider. All right, so is there a back plate on this? I would assume no, right?
Yeah, there actually is, or at least I put a back plate in there, but
All right,
because
so
it's
we'll
2
say,
pieces.
all right, so we'll say there is a back plate, and we'll say it's dimensional. What would that typically be, acrylic?
Right, I think in this one, because of the aluminum frame, it may be aluminum backed, like the other
All right.
one was, but not necessarily. You can do it either way.
All right, we'll just say it's brushed aluminum. All right, so that's my back plate. Now, part of this process is I'm just going to cut it out. And it's a simple cut. And that's it for the back plate. And I'm going to add a new piece, which is going to be the photopolymer. And this here, instead of 8 by 11, is going to be, we're going to say, let's say 5 by 11. And this is going to be the face. And this is going to be a photopolymer. And it's going to be an interior. And then our piece. And we're going to have to cut this out. And it's going to be a simple cut. We're also going to add braille to this piece. Juvenile court. And it's included in the process of the photopolymer. And we're also going to add some screen printing, which is just going to be tipping of the juvenile court. This is going to be white. And it's only going to be about 20% of the fill. And we're going to be rack dry. And in my opinion, we have a logo on this piece. So you would add a second screen printing process, which would be the logo of the eagle or whatever that is. Now, how do I add a second screen printing process, or how would that be all part of one screen?
Hold on just a second. Let me take a look at it.
Why'd you go 5 inches instead of the
Because
8 by 11?
it's a top piece, then we're going to put a divider and then a piece at the bottom.
Ah, okay. So that's not a painted line. That's a 2 pieces is the way you're looking at it.
That's an 11-inch plastic divider.
Okay. Oh, yeah, the plastic 11-inch divider.
Oh, I got you. I see what you're saying in that screen print function.
Yeah, how would you add? Would you add just 2 screen printed processes to that? Could you have 2 screen printed tabs, or how would you do that?
No. See, I put that in as a as an image, as a digital image on clear or a cut vinyl. Trying to think of that.
So we would need another tab here that said cut vinyl, and then we would cut that out and apply it. But typically you wouldn't cut that. You would digital print it. Can we just say we'll hot stamp it now, or?
Yeah, go ahead and do hot stamp. It's like you would hot stamp the juvenile court.
Right.
Actually, I should look at that.
Well, let's say this would be silver. All right, so those of you that are wondering, where we cut this, we cut the photopolymer out. It's 5 by 11. Uh-oh, I didn't check the box. So now we're cutting it out. We're adding the braille, which is juvenile court. We're going to tip juvenile court in white. That is the photopolymer process that we have to add. And this is just going to be the text. And then we're going to add hot stamping, and the hot stamping is the logo. So then we add another piece. And I'm thinking from the top down now, so this would be a, I'm going to come back to the dimensions, but this would be a plastic divider. This would be part of the face. I'm not sure. Help me out here.
If you're just looking for that black divider, that would be considered a piece of extrusion, probably.
Not framing? Okay.
All right.
There's a fine line between extrusion and framing.
Or
it could be a miscellaneous option that, you know.
So they would have their divider piece here is what it would be.
Right.
Correct.
So I just have
Depending
to select
on
that.
what it was, but yeah.
All
It
right,
may
now,
also be part of hardware.
okay, now in this case, what would that be? This would be like a 0.25 by 11?
You don't really need the height there at all. The height is fine the way it was, because this is a linear function that's vertical. It's not looking at height at all when you're running vertical.
It's really going to be
Okay.
horizontal,
Right, where
but it wouldn't matter,
it'd
right?
be horizontal, but then it, right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, right, it would be. And then we're just going to cut these out. We'll hand cut them with some snippers or something.
Snippers.
All right, so then we have a 3 by 11 piece. And in this case, it's going to be a face, and I'm assuming it's going to be a dimensional piece. Now we're going to cut. We're also going to apply cut vinyl, which is going to be high performance. It's going to be white. And text. That's what we're cutting out. There is no brill. Now we need to paint this, I'm assuming.
Probably, right, 'cause color match.
Yep. It's going to be blue. And we're going to match. And then it's just a matter of adding my other pieces. So I'm getting quite a few pieces here, which is good, because this is, and this here is going to be 2. This is going to be the frame. We'll say linear. We'll say metal. This will be the vertical side. And we're just going to cut this.
I would remove the setup in this one. Just
Okay. And then we're going to clone this. And this would be the horizontal piece. And then we have the assembly, and we'll say it's going to take 2 hours to assemble it. And the hardware would be the screws. I don't have any screws here, so I'll just type it in.
that's fine.
All right. I think
Looks
I'm done.
good.
Now I think the only thing I could have done is on the second piece, Rob, is I probably should. I don't have the process here, but would you typically paint photopolymer, the blue color?
Typically not. The photopolymer is going to be blue. You may paint it, but
Okay.
generally you're boring out the primary and just tipping the top. But
Okay.
anything's possible.
So the top part is photopolymer and the bottom part was not.
Correct.
Correct. Basically, the bottom part is replaceable side. The juvenile court stays there, and they're going to swap out whatever judges happens to be on duty. And so those are made a little bit differently and quicker.
Right.
And
Well, they
So
probably
that's
would.
why,
If they were really going to swap it out a lot, they wouldn't use applied vinyl, would they?
well, yeah, they're
Yeah,
going to
that's-
swap out that entire piece. Basically, the sides of your frame, they're extruded, which you can open up.
Right.
So you can pop them open and put in the new piece.
Okay, gotcha. That whole acrylic piece.
Right.
All right.
right, and since there's no raised text on that bottom, they're not going to use photopolymer. It's too expensive. They're just going to make it acrylic and paint it.
Excellent. Good job, Dean.
The uncut vinyl, is there a way, because I know it's really important to make sure that they either surface apply that vinyl or subsurface apply that vinyl. Is there, how would you note that on the work order?
It'll be on your process. It'll be on whichever piece you're applying it to. If there's something going over the top of it, then I think I'm right in saying that.
No, what I'm
He wants to define whether it's surface or subsurface on that item.
Gotcha.
Generally, it's just a production note at this point. Not a bad call, though, to actually think about adding that as a descriptor.
What do you mean by surface or subsurface?
If it's a
Is it
clear
mounted on
item,
the front or the back side?
I'm sorry, say that again?
if
Go
it's
ahead,
a
Ron.
clear face, are you sticking it to the front of the face or the back of the face? So it shines through.
Ah,
Kind of like a
gotcha.
window sticker may go on the back of the window. So a lot of things in this business will have a colored background and then an acrylic face that is subsurface so that it's got a smooth, so it looks framed.
Yeah, and it's
Well, they
also
do a
tamper
subsurface
proof.
to protect it. So I understand that functionality right now. I think I have
I
a
think a checkbox would be fine for that.
subsurface rather than a note. Okay.
Yeah, you could put it right under that color box there,
Subsurface or something.
or push that down and put it on the top of that before you select your type. That way they
Right. I
recognize
think that'd be better. Put it on the top. Force them to look through it. That would work for me. Good question, by the way. Good thought.
Thank you. I'm glad I thought of that.
Dean, you're sharp, man.
First time I heard that, Lee. Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'll wait till the end to ask some of my questions because this don't have anything to do with this piece. Sorry, Linda. Go ahead.
What I was going to say is let's get Mitch on one and try to build something. If you want to save this one.
Just a quick observation on it.
All right, what do we want to build? It'll be ADA compliant.
Mitch, I have some room signs that
All
are
right.
going to be. These are actually going on the door. They're 4 inches by 8 inches. And I typically do a photopolymer process in my shop here. I'm going to do a room number with an insert. So
Room number with insert. I'm writing
with
it
an
down.
insert.
I
So
don't
basically,
forget.
you can picture a 4 by 8 piece going on a door. At the top of the door is the room number, and below is an insert where I can insert the name of the person that's in that room.
Okay. So what we're going to have is going to be back plate. Let's see. So we're doing really two pieces like what you just did, a top part and a bottom part, aren't we?
You tell me. I don't know. We can either do it as a two-part, or you can either imply the insert piece to the face.
Okay. Would there even be a back plate on this, or is it just a face?
Rob says yes. There's always, or typically there's a back plate on everything.
20 or 30 minutes. A couple of the folks are still on a training call. We're working on shoehorning them off, but. And then I'll probably have like, I don't know,
Usually acrylic?
once I mention what we're.
All right. Doesn't need to be real thick. 1/8 would be all right.
Awesome.
Perfect.
11:30 or something like that. So.
Area only. Scrap looks okay. We got to cut this out. On the top part, is it going to be vinyl? Or no, you said photopolymer?
You're just on your back plate now. This is the back plate.
Okay, so on the back plate, are we going to put the room number? No, we're going to do the room number photopolymer, and then we're going to use applied vinyl. So all I really need to do is cut this back plate, add cutting, add the setup, add the machine. What are we using? The Gerber. And it's a fairly simple cut.
No, I'll put this on.
Okay.
The
So
only
we're
thing there is you remove the setup. It automatically applies the setup once you add labor.
I
And
got
you
it.
check that you removed it.
So when I checked it, I removed it. Okay. That would be me. And let's see. We're not going, I think that's all I got to do for this back plate is cutting, correct? Or do we need to paint it?
No, sir. It's just the back plate. It's going to be hidden.
Okay. So now what we got to do is the front plate. We're front part. So
Yes,
we got
sir.
to add a new piece. And the height of this piece, we're just going to do the top part with the numbers first, is, let's say, 2 inches times 8. This is going to be the faceplate. And our process is going to be the photopolymer. It is interior. Pick our photopolymer part. And we're using this by, we use the full sheet because we're doing a bunch of them. We got a photopolymer process, so we're going to add photopolymer. Does it put the the setup goes on there. I see what I did. And this is the window. No, we're already at 2 1/8.
Okay, there's 2 ways to skin this, basically. What some people would do is they would take the full size of the sign and consider that their photopolymer and leave a window, which is basically an indention into the photopolymer where they're going to put their slide in. If it's a paper slide in, what they will do, they're just going to replace the names with a paper cut in. They would create a window for the size of their cut in and then put a clear acrylic piece on top of it. Or they could make it like we made the other one where it had 2 pieces of acrylic.
So here I could have a window that would be 2 by 8, but the whole piece could be the 4 by 8 right here.
Correct.
Okay, if I understood you correctly. Now, how do I identify where this window is? And what's the top?
That's in the description.
Okay. So here would be the room number on top, right?
Right.
Or do I no, this would be the name, insert name on bottom. Would that be the way to describe this?
Well, that's both. That's kind of the whole that's the photopolymer with a insert window 1/2 inch from bottom or 1/4 inch from bottom type of thing.
Okay. So top is room number. Insert name on bottom.
And Mitch, if you think about it, your window, your 2 by 8 window,
Yeah.
It probably should be like 1.75.
To make room for the divider.
Well, so you have a little bit of material on the bottom below it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, and this type is really, Rob, what you said, a paper insert or?
Right.
Okay. Or we were going to do acrylic, I think, right? But
Well,
that's
it's
going to be
an
another
acrylic
process.
piece. Right.
Pardon
That'll
me?
be another process. That'll be another process.
Okay. Okay, let's see. So what we got is the photopolymer. We've done the photopolymer process. We're going to cut it out. And it adds the setup. And we're using the Gerber, it looks like, a lot. And I'd call this a simple cut. And there's no braille. I don't think there's any finishing on this. The room number itself, we've got to, do we want to tip this, screen print the room number, Dean?
Well, I want them in a gold color.
Okay, so we're going to paint, we're screen print it.
You want the background in a gold color, or you want the text
No, I want
in a gold color?
the room numbers in gold.
Okay, manual tipping. And we're going to, where's the color? I thought there was a color. Rack dry. Ink type. And let's see if we got a gold. Nope.
You can type in a gold.
Yep. And the gold's only going to take up, is this, come on, move over. Bill's only going to be 10% or something, not much. Okay, new screen, color match, no. Okay, so we got the color, we got the photopolymer, we got the cutting, there's no braille, finishing. I think we're done with this piece. So what we got to do now is the insert piece on the bottom. We've got, here the way I set this up, the 2 inches on the top. What we need is the new piece. Somehow or another we got to come up with the name itself of Dean, which is going to be the 2 inches, or what was that, 1.75 I think we said?
Yes, sir.
And this is going to be the faceplate.
I would say call it, yeah, I'd call it an insert if that's what you're doing, if that's what you're making here. If you're making the window, I may call it insert window.
Okay, hold on. So let's do the insert. I like that better. Thank you.
By the way, Mitch, that piece there, you can type in whatever you want. So you can call it. It's just information.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I could overtype insert.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And this process is dimensional. The part is acrylic.
Okay,
What were you going to say, Rob?
I was thinking you were doing the paper insert, but you're doing the window. Okay, which is fine. The insert would actually be the paper piece that they slide into the window. But
okay, so that would still be a dimensional process, correct?
no, it would be probably a roll stock or a flat stock, depending on what they were going to use to print it on, because this is a digitally printed item.
Okay. So let's say it's a roll stock. All right, and it's going to be paper. Usage calculated, I like that. We're adding the print. They hit the setup. Got it. And we'll put it on, I don't know, we'll pick the top one. Resolution. We'll leave it standard. Application tape. Yeah, we'll have tape on the back. No, we don't need tape.
No, we won't.
No, we won't,
Insert.
because we're just inserting it. We do have to print it. We got to cut it.
That would be cutting, not cut vinyl.
Pardon me? Oh, yeah, I see. Got it.
Uncheck that cut vinyl then.
We're cutting out of paper, add cutting. It'll hit the setup. Cutting it on this simple cut. Okay, so where are we putting his actual name? It's not on the print.
That's it. You're digital printing it.
You're digital printing it.
So if you're digital printing, Mitch, why are we cutting digital print on a router?
Oh, no.
Yeah, you would typically hand cut that, Mitch.
Okay.
Or guillotine cut it, or
Yeah, or
I cut
guillotine.
it.
Okay, so we don't need any of this here.
No, go to the cutting
Yeah.
tab.
Cutting here.
Just change your machine.
So we'll go to a hand cut or guillotine or something like that. Okay. All right. No finishing. So what am I missing? I'm missing the insert piece, the framing or something on it, aren't I not?
Okay. The other two things they would generally do to this is they'd have a piece of extrusion on the top and bottom of that window,
Okay.
and then they would have a thin piece of acrylic inside that window to cover the insert. So basically you can slide, those extrusions are more of a slider type thing, and so they can slide the paper behind the window and pull it back out. And generally they decorate that with like a piece of extrusion around the frame, up the top and bottom. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It would be a metal one you're talking about, or it could be plastic too.
Typically, it
couldn't
could be plastic, but it'd typically be like a metal,
Okay.
you know.
And so,
And it would be considered extrusion probably in that part because they're typically made with the grooves to be able to handle that window. So your process type, you have framing, you may want to choose extrusion. It is
oh, okay, I got it now. So where's my?
second to bottom.
Okay, so not linear. Okay.
It works in the same way that the framing does. It's just a separate categorization of materials.
Okay. All right, and so really, are we having two different types here? One for vertically and horizontally?
You may not put any horizontally. It may just be a top and a bottom since you've done the window being the entire length.
Okay.
So often the window would go to the entire length and it would just be horizontal.
Yeah, horizontal probably,
here.
wouldn't it?
Right. Yeah, it'd be horizontal pieces here.
Okay. Add cutting. Should have hit the setup.
You know, hand
We're
cut.
going to hand cut this also. And it's a simple cut.
And you're going to need two pieces, Mitch.
Say again?
Quantity up above, you're going to need two pieces of that extruded, one for the top, one for the bottom.
Gotcha. And it's really not going to be the 4, it's going to be the 1.75, is it not?
That really doesn't matter because all it's looking at, since you said horizontal, is width.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But you could change that if you wanted to.
That's all right. And then we got to put it together.
Well, you need your acrylic insert for that extrusion now.
You need basically the window pane.
I thought we did that.
That was a paper insert.
I thought we
It's
did
a
that as part of the photopolymer.
No,
We
because the
did.
photopolymer is colored. What they're going to do is now take a thin piece of clear acrylic. Think of it as a glass on inside of a frame. They're going to put that in a window so they can slide the piece of paper behind it. And so and then they'll slide that piece of paper out and replace it with a different name. But it has a small piece of acrylic, thin acrylic, as their window, basically, held in by those two pieces of extrusion.
Didn't we tell it that when we initially set up the photopolymer that we were putting a window in there?
We told it we were putting in a window, but we didn't tell it what we were going to cover that window with. All we said is leave the space for it, and in the design process, they will make sure that that bores out for a window when they do the photopolymer. So, but we still haven't told it the piece that goes on top of that window.
Okay.
So did I
Hey,
pick
Mitch,
the wrong process here? Because I don't.
Yeah,
it's not going to be
you
a
selected
4-inch.
a digital print. You selected the process as a digital print. That's not what our window is. It's a dimensional process, which is just
Right.
clear acrylic.
Correct.
All right, I lost you. All right, my process, you're talking right here where I have flat stock, right? I should have picked dimensional.
Yes. You selected flat stock print, which is meaning you're going to print to a piece of flat stock. And in this case, you're not printing anything. It's just a piece
All right,
of
can we
material.
can we stop right there? We're talking about here's one of the things I have. We're talking about clear acrylic window. If you look when we select acrylic and then we drop down to our parts for acrylic, all we have is white. Can we put a clear in there? I mean, if we're going to demo this, we're going to be working with clear windows with everybody
That's
that we
fine.
work
Feel
with.
free to put in a clear acrylic. But yeah, you are correct. It would generally be clear acrylic.
I hear you, Lee.
So is this piece called a faceplate, or is this called a window?
It's all part of the face.
Right.
But you can call it whatever you want. That piece could be anything.
All right, so it's the window, yeah, it's the front of the window. Okay, gotcha.
Right.
So
You
this
could
could
type
be
in
the
window
window, right?
Right.
Right.
All right, okay. But I agree, Kathy, that's
But
gets
it
kind of
takes plate,
confusing, don't
that
it?
means the whole sheet, the whole page.
Okay, so all I got to really do on this window is just cut it.
Correct. And make sure your height is correct, because it's only 1.75.
Got it. I got to change that. I will here in a second. Oh, yeah, I need a new job doing ADA signage. Okay. What else have I forgotten in the process?
I think
We got our window. We got our extrusion for the framing. We have to put it together, so we need some assembly time, whatever that's going to take.
correct.
We had our, what process was this? Our faceplate, which was a photopolymer process. Then we had our backplate.
And this is ADA, so where's the braille?
No, it was not ADA. Oh, I said it was.
Yeah. we
I
started
got
there.
you. What happened to my definition? I know I typed in room sign.
I don't know. You can type it in again. I'm not sure. I didn't see it disappear.
I didn't
Interesting.
see you type it.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, let me just expand upon one or two small things here,
Okay.
just so that you understand the differences. This looks great. This is basically what would work. Just something that we didn't discuss yet. We've pretty much done all our tipping with screen printing. The other big one, especially this one, since it was gold, I would probably not screen print a gold. I would hot stamp a gold if I had that functionality, because it'll actually give you that real metallic look. So in this particular case, if I could hot stamp it, I would, rather than screen print it. They basically are both do the same thing for tipping, except hot stamping uses a foil. So when you need those strong metallics and stuff, the hot stamping is going to look better if they have that ability. Just an FYI.
Hey, Rob.
Yes.
To add to that, if I was doing photopolymer and a customer requested something specific like that, the hot stamping, which I can't do in-house, I need to outsource that hot stamping part. Would I just add another piece to this and specify that that was outsourced? Or is there an outsource tab I can add to my processes?
Both. Either or. There is an outsourced process I can add here, or you could choose the process type outsource, and it will give you that tab.
Okay. Got it. I think I got it now.
Right.
Only observation I have, it seems like our pricing is really high. I know that one that it was like $700 for that one.
Notice the definition room sign's gone again.
In the labor constraints of things, if you were doing one, these would not be cheap. Because there are huge amounts of upfront labor involved in all these little pieces. If there's
Choose the quantity to
See
10.
what happens per unit.
What's that?
Let's change the quantity and see what happens per unit price.
Dropped down quite a bit.
Nice.
Yeah, how's that look, Lee?
All in the front. Now, about the overwritability in this product, a little different than the other ones. You'll notice it's showing me a square inch cost. This is all the pieces together based off of the 4x8. And so I also then have a square inch price. That can be overridden directly as a square inch, so I can go in and say, no, I don't want to use any of this pricing. I just want to charge $1.50 a square inch. And it will eliminate all the pricing below and charge $1.50 a square inch.
So if I go to my pricing here, well, we don't have margins showed on.
Right, because that's cost-based, right? There's now, the margin is here.
Where?
Well,
I'm sorry.
67.9.
Where are you seeing that? All right, your margin. Okay, got it. I see it.
Because that's also overridable. I can say, no, I don't want to overwrite by the square inch. You'll notice when square inch is checked, margin disappears. It won't let you do both. And then, or I can say, I want an overall margin change, and therefore it's going to eliminate what it's doing now. Look at all the costs and adjust this margin however I want.
That's sweet. Very sweet.
Just depends on what you want to do.
Is that going to
Now,
be
remember,
incorporated eventually to other pricing forms?
Yeah. What there's really, be careful here, though, because if I adjust my margin, no problem going in and adding more things to it. It will continuously keep that margin. But if I overwrite a square inch price, well, you just defined a square inch price. Anything you add to it isn't going to affect that square inch price. Does that make sense? Why it would be that way?
Anything I add isn't going to be affected by the square inch afterwards.
Right. Once I overwrite this and say it's $1.50 a square inch, it's $1.50 a square inch no matter what I add or remove from the bottom at this point.
Gotcha.
Okay. Makes sense.
Because I've now defined that. Where the margin defines the margin at that point, but we could still work by adding more things. It would just always maintain that margin.
What happens when you throw in an outsourced item on that?
It's, good question. Very good question. Think about how I handled that. I think it takes cost on the outsource and does the same thing. Yeah, it does.
Interesting. So if I've got something I bought for $2 and I'm charging $5, it's going to change it.
Correct. I will verify that, but it should change that because you're now maintaining an overall margin across the border of the project.
On an outsource, it wouldn't even be looking at it as square inch, though, so if you're at square inch.
No, it looks at, remember, this square inch price looks at everything as being part of the square inch. So even though a frame is linear, it's still adding it to the square inch price of the overall sign.
And that includes your labor, your additional labor and everything, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
It includes everything that you've done. And you're just saying, no, this sign is X dollar amount per square inch, no matter what I'm doing to it.
I see. Okay. Gotcha.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Might get some pushback on that, but I doubt it.
Yeah,
That's the real way to do it.
It has to be thought out.
You just have to, that's why I'm telling you, you got to realize that when you fix something in the system, it's fixed. It's not going to change again.
Yeah, you just changed it, yeah.
Now, you can uncheck it and go back, and it recalculates. If you uncheck the box.
Okay, any more questions?
I want to see something. That's definitely affecting the price across the board.
Yeah.
Wow. Huh. And so then, does not matter if I take that off. Very cool. Cow.
Hey, Rob, I'm noticing that Mitch's definition of room sign is disappearing.
Yeah, no, I never typed it.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
No, I did. It's disappearing every time. I think it's happening when we're switching. Let's see. So now we're on a field, but I think when I switch to a different tab, or was it when we added a tab?
I don't know. We'll play around with that and see if we can.
Somewhere it dropped it.
I'll
Didn't
take
drop
a
it
look.
there. Okay, so I don't want this tab that I just added.
Delete
Hit
it.
the delete above it.
Yeah, I see it.
You can also move them up and down and rearrange their order.
Yeah, I see that. Well, now it won't disappear.
We'll play around with that and see if there is really a problem with that.
Yeah, it disappeared twice, Linda. Good catch.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up these estimates so that we save them in there the way that they should be done. And I'll put on the side, I'll send it around, circulate it to the team, all the processes and kind of label the pieces, you know, what part of that sign it was. And then you'll also have this recording, hopefully, to refer back to if you need to, as a training tool. Anything else?
Yeah, I just have something to add if we're done.
Okay.
I just want to add to Lee's comment there, and I was going to do this earlier. I figured I'd wait till we were done.
Okay.
In reference to materials that you would select for demonstration purposes, it needs to be more complete. There's just, to me, there's not enough data there. I understand we can go in and add things. However, in my opinion, it should fall back on us to add the data, and then we're going to update the data set, and we have to add it again. And remember what we added. It should be included as part of the standard data set that goes out. So we don't have to continue to add data. But like the acrylics, as well as with all the processes, the photopolymer, there's one option there. From a selling perspective, when people are looking at it, it's nice to have a couple different options that are typical across the board. I understand there's many, but give us a couple different options to select from instead of just one. And that helps.
Okay. I'll take a look at that and make sure that we have at least two.
I have a question, too. And the people that I've talked to, they seem to do hotels or apartments, pretty big projects that take a while, and they seem to get into progressive billing with these guys. Is the progressive billing part working on the billing side?
Define progressive billing. You want to do one invoice and then progressively bill it? Yes and no. It is working as far as from the manual perspective to do it. It's not working within OB right now due to an issue with the formulas to automatically control it. I'm not sure where Deb is on that particular repair, but they could still do it manually when they bill out the invoice. You just can't really do it within the system and saying I want to do 10% of it now and it automatically do all of that.
What I've shown people, Mitch, is the payments, not necessarily the payments tab, but the I can't remember what it's at, but you can bill like a certain percent of the job. That seems to work pretty well. I'm not aware of any issues there.
Right, that one does work well.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think when if this became an order, there's a new tab called Progressive with the percentages that show up.
Right, right.
Now that's progressive. What is that? That's progressive payments. I don't think that's progressive billing. What you're talking about, right, Dean?
Yeah, but
No, it is. It is.
so when you're doing an order, how would you just slide one of those bars to whatever dollar amount you're trying to get to? Because most of them are doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
And
It's a
when we get the
percentage, though,
fix
it's not
from
necessarily a
Deb, it will be a pop-up button that you can tell it a quantity of being shipped without running that slider. Having an issue at this point with doing that. Have a dev issue.
Okay.
But that function allows you to say, I'm shipping 15 on this day, 12 on that day, etc., and it calculates the percentage differences and shifts that percentage into partial shipping. But I haven't heard anything on that fix recently, so.
Interesting. That sounds pretty slick.
Okay. Any more questions? I think it was a good session. I think this should help. Don't you think?
It helped me.
Yeah, and we'll get some more parts in there.
Yep.
Maybe a good
And
story
I'll-
project tomorrow.
And I'll send around some recaps of this session so that it'll help to refresh and drill in the whole idea. All right?
Great.
Got it.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Good day. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.